All across the country, we have seen images of statues of historical figures connected to our country's dark past. For some, they're either being torn down or vandalized.
Tonight, Ryan Jenkins takes us 360, listening to several perspectives on this issue to get a better understanding of why this is happening.
Statues beheaded, vandalized, and toppled from coast to coast and right here in Wisconsin. Monuments becoming targets, many now covered or boxed up. Some cities proactively removing statues of racially charged figures who owned slaves. To fully understand what's behind this monument movement, we're going 360, speaking to an alderman who stood alone in voting against the removal of a Christopher Columbus statue, a lawmaker pushing to protect statues, a national organization that calls the removal of these monuments offensive, and the executive director of the Wisconsin Black Historical Society, who says the celebration of historical figures with racist past must come to an end. That's where we'll start.
We're often faced with the challenge that there are people who have done accomplished and great things, and monuments are put up, and yet their life has been dirty with these demeaning kinds of racist behavior and context.
Claiborne Benson says monuments of anyone who owned slaves or who didn't fight for the equality of all people should be taken down.
In the grayness of these statues, we see making African Americans less than human, continuing their enslavement, making people in general today feel that they're not equal.
In some cities, public monuments have been destroyed and vandalized.
Is that acceptable?
Yes, they need to come down. And if the legislature body moves too slow, they need to come down.
State Representative Rob Hutton sees things differently. He co-authored a bill that protects statues and monuments on public property in Wisconsin, stiffening the penalties for anyone who defaces or destroys one.
There is the need for law and order in our communities around property.
The proposed bill comes after protesters in Madison dragged down this statue of Colonel Hans Christian Hegg, a man from Racine County who once fought to abolish slavery. It's still unclear why protesters tore down his statue, and Representative Hutton says without important conversations, he's not sure progress can be made.
The removing of this monument address the actual concern that's there, or is it a scapegoat or a convenient process for which we all feel good at the time, but doesn't really address or improve the situation long term?
In Columbus, Wisconsin, city leaders voted to remove a monument of the city's namesake, Christopher Columbus. Alderman Paul Pfeifferone was the only person who voted against that removal.
I have a friend who's a Native American, and she hated the statue coming into town every single day and seeing it. At the same time, people are saying that, if we get rid of it, it's erasing history or falsifying the past.
He says he was never against the idea of removing the statue, but he wanted more public debate.
A statue of Christopher Columbus being taken off its base and put in a DPW storage lot is not to automatically say, okay, Christopher Columbus was no longer a bad person, everything's good. It doesn't do that.
In Chicago, there was no vote when Mayor Lori Lightfoot ordered several statues of Christopher Columbus to be removed after violent protests left police officers injured. The executive director of the Italian One Voice Coalition, Andre Domino, says removing these statues is offensive.
Columbus is an important symbol to Italian Americans, and Italian Americans are a recognized group under the 14th Amendment. So taking away a symbol that an ethnicity feels is so important to them is really an insult to all Italian Americans.
Domino goes on to call the attack on these statues an attack on American history.
If we're going to attack these statues, where does it end? Where does this attack on our history end?
As the conversation continues, President Trump has ordered the creation of a National Garden of American Heroes, he says, to tell our, quote, great national story. It's been reported that that garden would feature statues of our founding fathers, civil rights activists, and of people like Christopher Columbus, and could even feature a statue of this man, World War II General Douglas MacArthur, whose statue stands tall right here in Veterans Park. Reporting in Milwaukee, Ryan Jenkins, TMJ4 News.
Well, certainly a lot to discuss there. Thank you, Ryan.